And I have quite strong views that blue lights are not a Christmas colour.
No, yeah, there's a lot of modern stuff around.
Yeah.
So nice.
I like sort of silvery white, yes. and that's it, really.
Twinkly.
Yes, but let's talk about the C word yet. It's only Halloween.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Hello, how are you?
Very, very well indeed, thank you.
Happy Halloween.
Oh, is it?
with every fibre of my being, I loathe Halloween.
You made me laugh with one of your Facebook posts about that the other day.
Oh yes, the only thing I like about it is potentially a Mr. Kipling terrifying fancy or something.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Yes.
Fancy.
A fearsome fancy or something. Yeah, I mean, do you know, like vaccinations, it's one of those things that I just had this low-level knowing, like from the moment I was born, that it's not right. I don't like it.
Yes, no, it's turned into a big commercial festival, but
it has. But lots of my clients, the woo woo spookies, they like. It's called Samhain, and they love. They've got the whole sort of Wicca ritual going on. It's like, no, I don't like any of this. No thanks. No. I don't even really like anything to do with being scared. I don't even like horror movies or anything like that. I don't like. It's just. Ugh.
I've got a good positive spooky story for you.
Oh, go.
Well, it's been quite a quiet week, but there's been little highlights of activity going on, not least of which is my determined daughter. I tell you, Phoebe, it's like a force of nature once she gets an idea in her head. And she decided we needed a corner sofa because normally speaking, they spend a lot of time in their bedrooms when Irving's not here. But now I'm here. I'm in the lounge all the time. So they decided they wanted to come for cuddles on a regular basis, and they wanted all two of them to be able to fit on with me. So that required a big...
That's quite a sofa, isn't it? Quite a sofa full.
It is. And we only had a two-seater, so they were constantly jostling for position. Now she decided we needed a three-seater sofa, and she wanted a long bit at the end, so a three-seater that goes around the corner. And we do have a living room that lends itself to that. Anyway, so she found one on Facebook, furniture for sale. I don't even know where she was looking, to be honest, but she had some sort of alert set up. Kept pinging me through pictures, and we found one for 80 quid, which is a really good nick. It's brown, but we can cover it with stuff, throws if we want to. She then decided that one of her mates who had a van was going to go and pick it up, and she was going to go with, and she was going to do the financial thing, and then they were going to come back and get it in the house. And of course, the mate let her down, and we had to find a new person who charged 50 quid, but was very helpful at the last minute, with an hour's notice. So that all went okay, and they got it through the door. Nelson had to do a little bit of arm wrestling to get it through the door, but they did. And so we've been spending quite a lot of time on it over the last week. We had...
Might as well get your money's worth.
Exactly, that's what Phoebe said. And so it was really good. And I was having a bit of... I've been watching quite a lot of rap with Nelson.
Yes.
So we watched something else, I can't remember what it was. And then I saw the most fabulous, if you haven't seen it yet, it's the ultimate feel-good movie. It's on YouTube, and it's James Corden, who, he does his carpool karaoke.
Yes.
He does it with Kanye West, but they do it with an aircraft.
Okay.
And the aircraft is full of the gospel choir that Kanye is using for the moment.
Nice.
And I'm not joking. I was blubbing like a baby by the end of it because James Corden was trying to be all casual about being with Kanye West on an aeroplane full of gospel.
Yes.
And he was pretending that they were just like two guys sitting next to each other on an aeroplane, and it was very, very funny. But then he would crack occasionally and just display his utter joy at being there. And the music was stunning. I mean, absolutely stunning. I was a little bit worried when they were all swaying in time that the aeroplane would be shifting about in the air, but it was just it was the funniest thing and the most fabulous thing. Anyway, so that was more rap, immersed in more rap. And then I was listening, you're going to like this, I was listening to Esther the other day on the said sofa, and she was talking about this story where it's how she was moving her furniture around, and then she decided that she was, because Jerry's died and she keeps discovering things about her house that she didn't know, so she was waiting for these guys to come and move the furniture around, and she was playing with the hi-fi, and she didn't realise, but she could get music outside. So, and she says, I put on my favourite rap album, and I was like, what? And I went for a little walk around my garden, and I was enjoying a very best-selling rap album that you would all know, and in my garden, and it just seemed so incredibly exciting to be able to do that. So then she turned it off, and the guys arrived, and she was talking to them, and one of them said that he was moving from wherever she lives. I think it might be somewhere like New England or Virginia or someone like that. Back to Alabama, and she said, "Oh, why are you moving there?" He said, "Because I'm a rapper, and I've got, a really great offer to get involved with something down in Alabama, which is my hometown." And she said, "Oh, you rap, do you?" And he said, "Yes." And she went back in the house and turned on the music all over the garden. And he just, "Who are you?" kind of this little old lady who likes rap music.
Yes.
Oh, and the funnier thing was, she was said in the garden she was practicing her rap moves.
Oh, bless.
Anyway, so this great story, and then blow me down if we're not sitting on the sofa and Phoebe says to me, "I've just had a contact from someone who scouted me on Instagram, wants to know if I want to be in a rap video."
Oh.
And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And, because after all that, watching the stuff about the UK rap scene with Nelson, this kid has got, I'm not going to say his name out loud, but he's got millions of views on YouTube. Millions. And his videos are seriously classy. One of them is called, it'll come back to me in a minute. No, I can't remember it, but it's a designer from Paris. And the classiness of these videos, I could just see Phoebe swanning through one of them. So we're waiting. She had to do an online audition. So she had to make a little video talking about herself briefly, and then she had to do an acting video. Now, Phoebe's never acted in her life. And she said, "Well, how do you do it, Mum?" I said, "Well, you literally just put yourself in the position of a person who's in the situation this woman's describing, which is that your boyfriend's just given you the most amazing present in the world. And you just pretend that you can feel how you'd feel in that situation." And she did a really, really good job of, 2 or 3 minutes of acting like she'd just been given the most amazing present in the world, looking to camera. And I was blown away by it. It nearly had me in tears. And then the woman said, "Oh, that's absolutely fabulous. Well done." So we're just waiting to hear. She's been put forward to the, I suppose it'd be the director, would it, that would choose the beautiful girls to go in a rap video?
No idea. Is it, is it, like, would it be a starring role, or is she?
I don't know. I imagine there'd be a starring role, because each one of his videos has got a beautiful woman in.
Right.
So, I imagine that she's perhaps been put forward for that, but then obviously there's lots of other girls wriggling about in the background. So even if she gets a wriggle about in the background, one to start with, it'd be going up to a proper, video shoot in a recording studios in North London.
Well, I think it would be a fun thing to say. Absolutely. That you've done in your life, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And so that prompted me to overhaul her, because it really made her think perhaps I could do modelling after all if someone's talent scouted me. And this woman's got an agency, largely dealing, it seems, with women of colour. But she also got a possible job to go to a restaurant in West London to be a person eating in the restaurant. So it seems like this woman's pretty active, and we've checked out her agency, so she seems fairly bona fide. But wouldn't it be wonderful if just a new sofa and Esther had helped me attract a new career for Phoebe?
Well, even a part-time career for Phoebe. Exactly. I certainly would prefer her to be eating in a restaurant than wriggling in the background of a rap video, if you know what I mean.
Oh no, come on, it's fun. It's all right. She's very fiercely feminist, so she wouldn't do anything that made her feel uncomfortable.
Okay, all right. Do you want to hear a fascinating fact about me, which may have happened before I knew you?
Go on then.
I've been in a gospel choir. Did you know that about me?
I did know that you'd sung, yes.
Yeah, fantastic it was.
Yeah, well, I tell you.
It was actually, I'll tell you when it was. It was when my mother died, because I had to stop going for a while. So it was in 2005, and I was still in my accounting job part-time, and they all came to see me when I sang gospel in a choir in North London, funnily enough.
It is an amazing music. It just really is. It really touches your emotions. And watching, 100 people sing.
Oh, I don't know how anybody could sit still when that noise comes on. Within the first bar, it's got the hairs on your back of your neck standing up.
Absolutely.
I'd also love to be in a steel band, actually. And I can't deny there's quite like being in the colourful minority when I'm in the, you know what I mean? It's like, who's that white woman in the gospel choir? Quite like that.
When I lived in Tulse Hill, I used to get that quite often on the bus.
Yes.
Now, there's one more thing I want to say about this. I can't remember. It just nearly slipped away then. No. Oh,
Sofa, rap, Esther, auditions.
So I've rehashed Phoebe's website for her.
Okay.
So it's just about, because she doesn't really want to make videos for people anymore, and she doesn't really want to be an affiliate marketer anymore. So I've just cleaned her website up, and I've got to say, making a simple, clean website with 3 or 4 pages is harder than you might think. It took me a whole 2 days to do it.
Well, that's the quote about writing shorter is harder than writing at length,
exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, that was an interesting week.
Yes.
Highly recommend the James Corden Airpool karaoke with Kanye West.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, and that's what I wanted to say. He talked very interestingly about his growing. What's the word? I had an intimation of it because I watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and his wife's very much on the road of becoming a lawyer and lobbying for positive change at the White House. But he's going much down the religious road,
and very pro-Trump.
Well, I don't know about being pro-Trump.
Yeah, he is. He wears the MAGA hat. He does.
Oh, does he? Well, I think he might be learning.
And they've claimed him as a sort of high-profile advocate of their worldview.
Well, let's just leave that to one side for a minute and talk about. He talked about in this video with James Corden how he found God, or God found him, and how God's showing off through him, which I found was quite an entertaining concept. The fact that James Corden was questioning him on how he can be increasingly religious and believe, anyway, it was interesting. Just watch it.
Well, the Americans are much more into religion than us, aren't they?
Over 50% of them believe in God.
Well, and also, the Trump fans believe that God's on their side as well. So it's not unconnected.
Yes.
But actually, if you think back, to the little bit of history that we know for, say the First World War and the Second World War, both sides thought that God was on their side.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, religious is at the root of most evil in the world. So, or justification for men's evil anyway, put it that way.
I think it might be like that expression that's been misunderstood about money. Money is the root of all evil. No, it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. And I think that the same might be said about religion. It's not religion per se, it's how it's been bent.
Interpreted.
Yes.
So we're getting quite deep already.
Yes, I haven't even told you about my week yet.
Go ahead.
Well, thank heavens yours was a long one, because mine's quite a short one, which is I'm moving house next Tuesday. It's Thursday today. And so it's all about preparations for vacating. And I had this nice arrangement set up with a cleaner, but I had to dismantle it because it was all scheduled for that weekend. I had to go to Manchester fast. So I've got Molly maids coming on Tuesday, and I will be paying quite an obscene price for that. But if I amortise it over the 10 weeks I've lived here, it's not obscene at all. Yeah. And my latest trusted house sitters update is Hampshire for most of November, London for most of December, and I've applied for New Year in Gloucestershire, and then January, February, back very near here, actually.
Oh, okay. So you mean in London for the Christmas lights and everything?
God, I'd rather stick pins in my eyes than go and see the Christmas. If you're a Londoner, its first prize in any competition is a weekend in London. Second prize is 2 weekends in London, because why would that light your candle if it had been the entirety of your adult life experience?
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't want to go and see the lights per se or any ceremony regarding. I just like the look of them. Brighton has a nice lights display, so if I'm
they're all right if you're out and about. Yes, they're all right if you're out and about, but I certainly wouldn't make a special trip. And I have quite strong views that blue lights are not a Christmas colour. No,
there's a lot of modern stuff around.
Yeah. So nice. I like sort of silvery white, yes. and that's it really.
Twinkly.
Yes, but let's talk about the C word yet. It's only Halloween.
No, I know. Phoebe's already talking about getting the tree out. Ridiculous.
Oh, now tell me, what has fueled your fire?
Well, as I said, I was spending quite a lot on time on the sofa. We had a day off. Well, I had a day off.
Oh, my word, Nicola, you had a day off.
I did. It was a weekday as well. When the sofa arrived, it had to be tested, obviously. So I was feeling a bit in the doldrums at the moment with my business, because I've got my, Chris Needs Academy, and I've got my top end where I occasionally mentor people one-to-one. But I had nothing in the middle, and I was feeling a little bit, I don't know what to do about that. And then I was thinking, do I really want to do anything about that? Do I need to? And then I was thinking, yes, I do, because I don't want to become dependent on this project that I'm just about to start with this team of financiers. I'd like to keep my own thing going. And so I was thinking, what should I do? Anyway, so I was on the sofa watching the latest Blade Runner film with the kids. And the very next day, just letting go and not worrying about it. And then the very next day, an email came from Chris Barrow, who is, I still read his stuff, even though it's all about dentists, because having been my coach, I'm interested to see what he's up to. And lo and behold, if he wasn't launching a really, really great mid-price program, which the structure of it, not content, but the structure of it, was exactly what I was looking for. Which is really marvellous, isn't it? So, sorry, Chris, I'm gonna, what's the word?
Well, you've been quite magnetic in both of these early sections this week.
Plagiarise. I'm going to plagiarise his structure, but not his content, obviously. And and launch that. And I think that'll run that one, which is really nice.
All right, cool.
What about you?
Well, I've got some feedback that ended up on Alice's website after the podcast. And I'm going to give it. Well, it starts really badly, and it's like, oh my God. So Alice slagged off my website.
I listened to the whole thing through. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought you were totally on form.
Oh, thanks. So Alice slagged off my website, didn't she? In it, and then this woman begins by slagging me off, but in the best possible sense. So her name is Caro, and she ends up as a listener of ours, so she'll hear this. And it says, "Hi, Alice and Judith. Being totally honest, I reared a bit like a frightened horse at the start of this one. Life coach, ? Then the quite forceful blast of Judith's personality.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I only stuck with it because I normally love art juice so much. All a little woo-woo for me. Well, am I ever glad I did? It just goes to show how narrow preconceptions can be self-limiting. I think I want to take Judith home in my pocket. I've done the next best thing and immediately taken her home in my Kindle. I'll also be checking in on her podcast. I'm excited when I find a podcast that has enough to say that it sticks around for years and doesn't peter out. Always a good sign. Loved the show."
Wow.
Well, Caro, thank you. I love these compliments that are hidden in things that look anything but. And they're a bit terrifying. You read the first few sentences, you think, oh, God.
Yeah. Exactly, because we're not very robust when it comes to nasty feedback, are we? No,
and it worked out rather well. And of course, I love going at the moment onto my Kindle stats, because I can see that I've sold 16 real books and 6 Kindle copies off the back of that one interview. I know. So there's 150 quid waiting for me in Amazon, which is quite nice.
Very nice. I got my first Audible payment.
Oh yes, good.
Yes, £76.
Have you been in to see as well, because what they tell me on this Kindle thing is how many pages have been read. I bet Audible knows how many words have been listened to.
Yes, possibly. I haven't looked recently.
That's quite fascinating, actually.
But that's 76 quid I didn't have before and haven't had for all the years the Money Gym book's been alive, because I couldn't be asked to edit the audio.
Yes, and Sue Ritchie, What About Her? She's just done it with made Audible out of her second book, I think. And it's quite a do. She went to a studio and did it properly and paid for it to be done. But yes, free money will come for that for her too.
Yes, and the thing is, it is the third of people who don't like to read will often click on.
I must say, I don't read much anymore, and I listen to a lot, and some of it is video. I just don't watch the pictures. I minimise the pictures and listen. And I've realised now that not only has my work always been audio, I listen to my clients, but I've started to get really good at assimilating information in that format. But I would say it's probably overtaken my ability to assimilate information in reading, because it's become more normal.
It's my least favourite and least good for me way of learning.
Actually, a client said to me yesterday the same thing. She said, I don't get podcasts because I don't know what I'm supposed to do while people are talking.
Yeah, I do like podcasts, but I regard them as entertainment more than a learning modality. Because the thing about listening for me is I'm visual, highly visual, and I get very distracted by anything else that I can look at or draw or do or whatever. But I've trained myself to listen to podcasts. But I'd really rather do anything else than listen to something when I have to learn it.
It's interesting the distinction you make about entertainment, because I learn even when I'm being entertained.
Yes.
I can't not learn. I'm always learning. When I'm consuming, I'm learning.
Yeah, I agree, but I just find it very, very difficult. I have to be, well, in bed, actually. The podcasts in bed are good for me because...
You're not alone there. I know a few people that listen in bed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to robust feedback, we had some from our next guest. I can't remember if we had the robust feedback after or before she became a guest.
We had it after. She was. We recorded her in. I think it was when I was in Lavenham in Suffolk. I think July. But we couldn't get Zoom to work that day. We had to cancel one of the people we'd scheduled. And this lady recorded herself and sent it in to us from Australia. And then the robust feedback came just a little bit after that, before we shut down for our summer holidays, I think. Yeah.
Well, her name is Bernadette Janson, and I know of her from the James Schramko's forum, and that's how she heard about Own It and us. And she came along and she became a listener guest, and she's got two businesses. One is called the School of Renovating, and you can find her at schoolofrenovating.com. But the thing she's sharing with us in this episode is really deeply practical tips on how to do something that I found absolutely fascinating, which is how to make money from Airbnb, how to create an income from Airbnb without owning any property. And it's quite a thing in Australia, and I'm sure it will become quite a thing in the UK as well. And the interesting thing is, when a business matures, so you get your first level of the business, how to make money from Airbnb if you've got property. Then you've got how to make money from Airbnb if you haven't got any properties. And then the third thing is how to make money, how to create an income from working with people who already Airbnb and who are sick of it. So she now is moving into this sort of third level of business, and she's helping people to do that, and she's doing it very well. And she gives us some fantastically practical tips of things that she really would watch out for, things that make you improve your income, the kind of people who do really well at this, and how to even do even better. And she talks about how a lot of Airbnb, people think it's just in big cities, but actually the places that do really well are high-end properties, suburban homes. Now, Neil and I stayed in a very suburban home in the Gold Coast that he Airbnb'd for us, and farms, apparently. It's becoming a real lifeline for farms who can't make a profit by being a farmer, but who perhaps have got a second building on the farm and they rent it out for weekend experiences. So I think you're going to find this really interesting, everyone, and it certainly opens your mind about different ways of creating an income without having to own any property, which I liked.
Thanks for having me, Nicola and Judith. It's a real honour to be on your podcast. Sorry if you're getting a bit of background noise. It's Friday night in Sydney and things are pretty busy around here. On to Airbnb. I fell upon Airbnb a little bit by accident. So I'm a renovator. And before that, I was a registered nurse, but I retired when my first child was born, and she is now 30. So it was quite a few years ago. So I've been into property, and in particular renovating and some developing and subdivision. Started out really just to keep myself sane. We had 4 children and I was home with them, while they were little. And so it was a way for me to feel challenged and also to contribute to the family finances. And so in my renovation journey, I have done lots of things, and now I work with women who want to improve their life, have a bit of a flair for creating beautiful homes, and want to really harness that to create the life that they love and the income that they need to support that. And in my quest to serve them, at one stage I was running a bit of an experiment. I wanted to figure out basically how cheap I could go in terms of a property to renovate to make a profit. So I hunted around to find the cheapest property that I could find in our suburb, which is Surrey Hills, which is probably about 3 kilometres from the city centre in Sydney, so it's very inner city. And I bought a very beautiful Art Deco, well, it wasn't beautiful when I bought it, it was pretty bad, Art Deco apartment in Surrey Hills for $356,000, which is very cheap, and set about renovating it. And in the course of the renovation, we had a few hiccups. So it was probably the narrowest profit margin I've ever gone into a project on. So it only had probably 20,000, 25,000 profit in it. And on day one, our labourer put a sledgehammer through the main hot water supply to the building of 48 apartments. And so that was a tiny bit traumatic. And to make matters worse, to rectify the problem, we were required to use the building's plumber, who was next to useless. So he just, added insult to injury. So there were significant costs and delays with that project. So when we came to get it ready to sell, I was really looking at ways to increase the sale price and to recover some of our losses. So one of the things I decided to do was to furnish it so that it was appealing to an investor, they could just walk straight in. And Airbnb had just come on the scene in Sydney, so I decided to put it on Airbnb in the settlement period. And so it was going to auction on a Tuesday, so the weekend before I got online and I whacked it up. In those days it was very easy, need a little bit more skill these days. And within 24 hours I had it 100% full, and the first guest was arriving on the night after the auction. So if it hadn't have sold, I would have been up the creek, but all went well. And for that month, I was able to return double what the long-term rental return would have been. So if I had have rented it on long-term, which I couldn't do for a month anyhow, it would have returned around $450 a week, whereas I was getting $800 a week on Airbnb. And so, over 4 weeks, that was, over $3,000 that went back into the profit margin. And so it really helped to recover the losses. And in actual fact, we did quite nicely out of the project. And so since then, I have been using Airbnb really to plug the gaps in my project. So if I have a project, we do a lot of apartments and they require approval to get started, even for very minor renovations. I put the property straight on Airbnb as soon as it settles until we've got the approval and we can get started. And that just stops us from hemorrhaging money while we're in that waiting period. We also put it on Airbnb after the property is sold. And if for some reason the property doesn't sell for the right price, then Airbnb is an amazing way of being able to get a return that will cover your costs quite comfortably, whereas long-term rental returns just don't. So that's really how it started. So I put together a program for our students because I just felt that it was such a powerful tool for them to be able to use. But then as time's gone along, I've realised that it is an amazing standalone business. So for someone, a lot of the women that I work with are quite challenged in terms of being able to get a loan to buy a property and don't have a decent sort of income. And like Airbnb is a low-hanging fruit, and you don't even have to own property to be able to have some listings on Airbnb, which is another sort of strategy I've tested and found to be really very lucrative. So I know that I'm on a limited time frame, so I thought the best way to manage this is to go through some dot points on how best to get started and actually get to a substantial income as quickly as possible. Tips to set up and some things to avoid. So the first thing I want to share is that there is a statistic that 1% of Airbnb hosts are making 19% of the income. So what that means is that for every sort of ordinary everyday host, a good host is making around about almost 20 times as much income. So there's definitely value in honing your hosting skills. But what does that mean? So according to the research, there are 3 reasons why they're making so much more money. One is because they have multiple listings. Well, that's, a bit of a no-brainer. The second one is because they have good hosting skills, and the third is their marketing skills. So they're the things that I want to talk about. So firstly, multiple listings. So I have come to the view that you are better to have less properties but have better quality properties and really focus on excelling as a host and getting that income as high as you possibly can. It takes around about 250 reviews to reach maturity in terms of a listing. So there's a lot of tweaking and improving in there in that time that you can do to really max out the potential of that listing. The second thing I want to say about that is that we don't just list on Airbnb, we list on multiple platforms. I actually don't love booking.com because it doesn't offer the level of protection and support that Airbnb does. But the reality is that we now get about 30% of our bookings through booking.com, and that just really helps to keep our vacancy rate to a minimum. So filling those gaps makes a massive difference, especially if you're paying rent on your property. So, for instance, the property in Surrey Hills, we were paying $750 rent on that. And, at $150 a night, you're paying a fair amount of your income in rent. So you want to make sure that every night is booked. And so how we do that is by having it on multiple platforms. And also we have a 2-night minimum, but when a 1-night gap, you occasionally end up with a 1-night gap, we actually open that up so that someone can book it. Incidentally, our nightly rate varies, so which brings me to the next point. Optimising your pricing is essential. So that you make sure that you stay full, but you, in the peak periods, you are securing the best price that you can. One of the ways we do that is by managing our listings on a site called Guesty. Now, it's not the best, like it has its downfalls, but it does enable you to manage all your listings on every site that you have them listed and be able to tweak them, in one place, which is, from a management point of view, is much more effective and efficient in terms of managing that pricing. Airbnb does have some pricing management tools like smart pricing and dynamic pricing. However, they're not overly intuitive, and we've tried a few different things. We've tried pricing apps, but we're really back to the stage where we actually tweak them manually, because you really do need to have decent local knowledge for that pricing to be accurate. The next point I want to make is, in order to build a business sustainably, once you've got a few listings, you really need to make sure that you're outsourcing as much as possible. I definitely don't do cleaning. Some of my students do. What I've noticed is the ones that are not willing to give up the cleaning to someone else burn out very quickly. Particularly if you're accepting 1-night stays, which we often do initially to build the listings visibility quickly. If you're doing a changeover every single day, you burn out, you hate the place basically. So outsourcing. So I outsource the communication. I have a virtual assistant who manages the communication with guests, because it's very important that communication is prompt, and I just don't have the time or the bandwidth to do that, so I outsource that. I've got a wonderful VA who's been with me since the beginning of the Airbnb journey, and so that's her role, and she does that very competently. The next thing I want to say is when you've got a new listing, you want to make sure that you get it up to speed really quickly, give it maximum visibility so that you can reach the superhost status in the first 3 months. The assessment periods run over 3 months. And so you want to make sure that your listing gets seen. And as it's a new listing, really the only tool you have to use is the price, because when you don't have any reviews, there's a big trust issue there. And so we don't really worry about the price when a listing goes up. We put it down. We use Airbnb's recommendations, which are always on the low side. And really just focused on the hosting to make sure that we're getting 5-star reviews. To reach superhost status, you need 10 5-star reviews. You need to have never cancelled a booking, and you also need to have I think it's an 80% response rate, which basically means you've responded in 24 hours. So that's, if you can't manage that, you probably should give it away. So getting to superhost status will really boost your income substantially. You'll find that once you're there, the bookings start rolling in, which is, awesome. And then you can start taking your pricing up. So to increase your visibility during that period, the whole idea is to give Airbnb what they want. So I know I've said we list on multiple platforms, but our preference is to book on Airbnb because it is much easier, it's much safer, and the fees are quite low. So some of the things that I recommend to our students to do initially is to put the property on Instant Book. Now, that can be a bit unnerving, and I certainly wouldn't do that if you're listing out a room in your home. But a property that you've rented for Airbnb, put it on Instant Book, but you just make sure that you set the criteria that you don't have new people to your listing. Everyone that comes to your listing has a review history, so you can see that they're decent guests and they're not going to trash the place. The other thing that we do in that initial period, if possible, is to have the minimum stay be 1 night, because that also will help you to get bookings. With the weekends, I'd keep the minimum to 2 nights because you really don't want people coming in and just staying Saturday night. But otherwise, keep it down to 1 night until you've got to superhost status. What you will find is it's sort of tough going initially. Once you get to 4 5-star reviews, you start to get some traction, and then the next point is at 10 5-star reviews, and you're really finding once you've got that superhost badge, it starts to take off. If you're worried about the potential for damage, that's another reason why we love Airbnb, because they have a $1 million host guarantee. And what that means is that if something happens that is not covered, you can make application under that to put a claim in. And I used to think it wasn't worth the money, the paper it was written on, but I've actually used it quite a few times. So I have found I've been able to claim for things that I can't claim back from the guests. In saying that, we've never really had a real catastrophe, and that's because we are quite vigilant in our screening process for guests. Even when we're on Instant Book, if we have a guest that we are concerned about, we of course don't cancel it ourselves because it'll impact our superhost status, but we actually talk to Airbnb and ask them to cancel it if we have a concern. And that is actually within their guidelines. So in terms of hosting and, the personal relationship of hosting, what I have found is that the women that I work with are actually very good at this because, I'm going to sound sexist here, but I feel that women having that natural nurturing instinct makes them fantastic hosts because they think about what the guests will need and preempt it and really look after them. And for someone that loves being a host, this is an awesome business. You outsource all the techie stuff so you're not having to deal with that and really hone in on what you are good at. Unfortunately, that's not my skill, so I manage the back end and I partner with someone who does have good hosting skills, so we're not having to put up with my lousy hosting skills. And then the last point I wanted to make was around marketing, taking it to the next level. So I've noticed that some of my students who have marketing backgrounds do really well at this. So things like setting up a blog. If you've got a few listings, you can start building a following, so setting up a blog, writing blogs around about the area and the listing to engage potential guests and also getting your guests to come back as repeat guests. Another thing that we're experimenting with is Facebook retargeting ads, which Nicola would know is quite a cheap way of getting leads via Facebook, and also using some video and Instagram to be able to really capture a new audience. And finally, I just wanted to quickly mention different types of listings. So there's all sorts of types of listings. You've seen the novelty ones on Airbnb where they have yurts and tree houses and whatever. But it's really important that you understand the type of listing you're developing and actually really hone in on that. So most of my listings are suburban listings, and you wouldn't believe the reason people use Airbnb for accommodation. You know, like you think a house in the suburbs, it would have no potential. But the reality is that people, you know, attending christenings, sporting events, birthdays, weddings, all need accommodation. And where they might have stayed with relatives or friends in the past, the introduction of Airbnb has given them another alternative. So that's the first type of listing I certainly experimented with. And then we have quite a few students with luxury listings that are doing very well. So they're going for a very high price point, and it means that they present the property in such a way. So their hosting skills need to be really up to scratch because they have a reasonably demanding client, but that then returns them an excellent nightly rate. And the other type of listing, which has been a real boost, particularly for people in remote areas, is the destination listing. And, you know, I've had students that have farms that have, you know, very poor income, you know, might have a second house on the property, put that on Airbnb, and it's absolutely a lifesaver. Because, you know, I know it's probably the same in the UK and Greece, but in Australia, we look to go somewhere on our weekends or our short breaks to actually really get away from it and experience something different. And for our Airbnb hosts, that's a great opportunity where there wouldn't have been one before, because in those areas, the long-term rental return is often very poor. Okay, so I hope that that's given you some tips and insight into how you can really harness the power of Airbnb and short-term rental in general. And thank you for having me.
I think what's interesting about this is I'm moving house next week because the people in the bigger high-end house next door are starting Airbnb. And the thing I remember when listening to Bernadette, and the reason I've encouraged you to do it this week, you know, is because these interviews get old if we're not careful, is that her business, I think I'm right in saying, is largely, she sees women as particularly talented at this. It's targeted at women, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's great. She says, you know, that our nurturing instincts are...
Yes.
And I remember with the hotel, that's why I did quite well with the hotel, because I got some little touches.
Yes, and Yvonne with the Airbnb. And I'm hoping your sister will listen to this, because she's got quite Sarah, she's got quite just a natural gift for property. And I think probably the personality for being quite a good.
Airbnb.
Well, I think there's something in it. Yeah, I do this. I think there's something in it for Sarah.
Yeah, and I'll send her the episode. But the other thing about it is, of course, that the things that Bernadette tell us about in her tips list there are the things that make a good business owner. You know, the fact that she talks about not getting involved in the cleaning yourself, partnering up with someone if you're not a natural host and someone else is more of a nurturing host than you are.
Yes.
You deal with the tech and the logistics, and they deal with the hosting side. And interesting. And brilliant for women, totally. So what's your word of the week then?
It's personality, because of Caro suggesting that I had a forceful blast for a personality.
That so describes you so well.
How very dare they? A forceful blast.
Yeah, a forceful blast of personality with an iron fist in a velvet glove.
I have had to reconsider who I am this week, I tell you.
Yeah, we're starting to get a picture, aren't we, of you?
Well, after 250 episodes, I think most people got it a bit faster, didn't they? But that was Caro's first, and she got it straight away.
The thought of someone putting you in their pocket would be like trying to capture a hurricane.
I'm not always like that. I'm quite calm. Now, what's your word of the week?
You're going to like this one again. It's sacrifice. It's from an Esther expression that I heard this week, and it says the episode's called "Never Talk About That Issue Ever Again." You know, when we were talking about how dangerous it was to spend time talking in these focus sessions about challenges and issues.
Yes.
Well, there's actually an Esther episode like that where she it's very funny, actually. I love her sense of humour.
Yeah, she's so funny. The one I like about Comfort in Life, where she talks about running up the river and there was no safe place for her to put her feet. And I laugh at that one every single time I listen to it.
Yeah, I like that one too. But anyway, so she goes on, and this is a real good phrase here, and it just popped out of that episode where she refused to talk about this chap's issue and spent the whole 20 minutes not talking about his issue. It was just cracked me up. It says, there is no issue worth sacrificing the vortex for. So what she said,
I do agree with her. Yeah.
Right. So sacrifice is...
also a fantastic Elton John song.
Is it? Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. Project updates then.
I do have a comment in this, but I'll let you go first with anything you've got to report.
I feel like I've talked a lot so far.
Okay. I was interested in that thing that Alice showed us where they measure their podcasts on their podcast platform in plays, not downloads. I thought that was a distinction worth exploring. And Alice says, and she's quite right, it doesn't matter what you measure it in, you've got to measure it against the same measurable all the time. I just thought that plays is a different thing from downloads. And the reason why it is because I never download anything. So anybody who doesn't download isn't measured in downloads, but is measured in plays.
But you can't play without downloading.
No, that's not true. I stream everything.
Online?
Everything. I'm always on Wi-Fi. I'm never without Wi-Fi. So I remember saying to you all once before, I don't understand why you people download. Of course, I'm never without Wi-Fi, so I never download a thing.
Yeah, but my podcast app won't play streaming. It downloads.
I don't listen to it on the podcast app, and neither do half of our audience.
Oh. Well, it's interesting because when you told me about their numbers,
yes.
I got a teensy bit depressed. And when you told me that their numbers were plays, not downloads, I got quite a big bit depressed.
Oh, well, I think we don't know what our plays number is. That's the point. No. We only know what our download numbers is. And then I did a bit of Googling, and it says the thing about downloads is you don't know how many people's actually listening to it. The thing about plays is it denotes a listen. I was wondering whether, given that we go out on multiple platforms, whether any of the other platforms measure in plays.
We would have to investigate, wouldn't
yes. We? Well, you would have to. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Right, you are. Okay, so on that topic, is that
yes, that's my comment, yes.
Okay, that's your comment. Very good. On that topic, we have just topped 124,590 downloads. And that's tantalisingly close to 125,000, which is quite a significant number, isn't it?
Well, it is until you compare it to the plays.
Yeah, until you compare it to what Art Juice.
Yes, it's done in 40 episodes. Exactly.
Oh, don't.
Well, the point is we're comparing chalk with cheese.
Yes,
and if you go in, as we've discussed often in this, if you go and look into it, there's no clarity in the field of podcasts.
No, there isn't. No. And also, we are appealing to a very tiny audience. And sorry about that noise. I can't turn it off, and I don't know how to. But Yes. So the other projects I've got going on is Stupa Life, which is slow at the moment. We've gone through the initial excitement of building the thing, and now we're trying to puzzle out how to fill the thing up with listings. And I've really sort of said to my business partner the other day, it feels like we're relying on other people too much, and I don't like it. And so we've worked out a way that we can move this forward without relying on other people to take action. So that's good. I always prefer to do that. And the final thing I've got written here is I've got a bit of a complicated sum for you.
Okay.
Are you up for it? Got your calculator?
Yes. And I haven't got my calculator. No, I don't even know where my calculator is anymore now that I live out of a series of bags. But tell me the sum, and if I can't answer
I've got several calculators, and I've tried to do this sum several times this week, and I don't know how to even calculate it, which is interesting.
What are you trying to work out?
I'm trying to work out if you wanted to earn £2,000 a month from an income that was derived from investing, how much would you have to have if you were growing that income at a rate of between 1% and 10% a month? How much would you have to be able to remove £2,000 a month without eating into your capital? And how much would you have to be growing it by per month to make sure you didn't eat into your capital?
A lot. That's a big income from investments.
Yeah, well, okay, so...
I can't do the sum live on air. I can't even do it with a calculator.
Okay.
I need to think about it a bit because you'd have to have... It depends is the answer. It's a classic accounting investment advisor answer. It depends on the yield you're getting on the different aspects of everything in your portfolio.
Okay.
It's much too hard a sum. I'm sorry.
If anyone's
Get back with me when I'm living in Lymington in 10 days. In 2 weeks' time, I'll have the facilities to answer your question.
Okay. All right, who or what's impressed you then?
Well, I'm going to tell you the story of the Rugby World Cup.
Really?
My family, as you know, are obsessed with sport.
Yes.
And my father worked, after the Royal Marines, my father worked in rugby, English rugby, and my brother works in English rugby. And every 4 years or so, they have this international competition. And it's been in Japan for the last 5 weeks, and there were 40 teams. And the final is on Saturday, and England have made it to the final. So out of 40 teams...
Yes, I keep guessing...
Yeah, so out of 40 teams, England have made it to the last 2. And apparently, I haven't watched any of the matches. I follow the score because it's important to my family. But I haven't watched any of the matches, and apparently England have played spectacularly well. And before the competition began, my brother said he thought they had a good chance. And he went out there with his wife, and she came back for a hip replacement operation. And now that England are in the final, he's going out again with his daughter and his son. And his other son can't go because he's the one that works in professional sport in golf, and he's in Saudi Arabia. So they're going back out with the hope that their team will win. They're going for the crack. And what I'm impressed about is, well, if you go to the website called rugbyworldcup.com, it's like the X Factor app. Because it's interactive. It tells you everything you need to know. You can find out the information you want interesting. It's a hub for passionate enthusiasts. It's colourful. It's all sorts of. It's a really good thing. But what I'm impressed about really is I don't have in my life a passion that would cause me to go to Japan on a plane twice in a month. And I'm impressed by people who have something they love so much that they pursue it. It's so important to them, I can't tell you. And there isn't anything in my life so passion really is what's impressed me, particularly my family's enduring love for English rugby.
Yeah, because in our conversation about your brother and sister-in-law going to Japan the other week, I missed the reason they were going. I thought they were just going for a holiday, but it's because of the rugby.
They went for the rugby, and so they could see 3 matches. Now, he supports England and she Wales, so they saw 2 English matches and 1 Welsh match. But then there was this funny weather, and they came home early and they didn't see the last England match. They had to leave early because they didn't think their plane would go. And indeed, he was right, their plane didn't go. And also she had this painful hip that had to be operated on, so they cut that short. But yes, it was if it's in Japan where you've lived, it's rude not to go, but frankly wherever it was they would have gone. I think it was in New Zealand 4 years ago and they all went then.
Oh my God,
I know. This is the point of the story. It's about who or what's impressed. Passion. One of my clients, a woman, is as passionate about Formula One and Lewis Hamilton and all of that. I mean, sport is anathema to me, really, but I do care about England doing well at anything, whether it's Lewis Hamilton or when England were quite good in the football thing when I lived in Somerset, and now that they're in the finals of this. I care for the people I love who care.
Yeah.
But I don't have that passion for anything, and I don't know whether it's sport. I mean, I have lots of interests in my lifetime, but I don't have an enduring passion for anything.
Yeah. Yes, it's funny, isn't it? Because I thought writing was going to be mine, but I've gone off it a bit.
I thought writing was going to be mine. I haven't written a word since March. I don't think it. I mean, obviously, it goes hand in hand with sport, but I don't think it's that. It's the fact that people have an enduring passion that never dies and that causes them to invest time and money in international travel. I mean, international travel is just awful. That you could go to Japan twice and relish it. In a month. I know, it's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, tell me what's impressed you.
Right, the gorgeous Idris Elba has impressed me.
Oh, I love him.
I accidentally stumbled across the fact that he had created a new series called In the Long Run.
He's an interesting man, isn't he?
He is such a multi-talented chap. He really
I know.
is. And I don't think he wrote it, but I think he co-wrote it with someone else. But it was his idea, and it's semi-autobiographical about a small boy growing up in the early 80s in Hackney. And I think I stumbled across it because the soundtrack to the Series 1 and Series 2, which has just started, is on Spotify. So, and it's got all the 80s classics. It's got everything from The Clash through to, gorgeous old soul and reggae. And it is so funny, Judith. Having been a Londoner yourself, you will absolutely love it. It's basically, if you come from a West Indian or an African background of any kind, or you've lived near to people who are like that. It's also got the Bill Buckley, is it? The guy with the mullet? He's got really short hair.
I know who you mean. He's white, yes?
Yes.
Bill, I know who you mean. It's not Buckley, but
something like that.
It does begin with B, and he's a very, very talented musician and comedian. Yeah,
he's very funny in this.
Yes,
in fact, they're all
Bill Bailey.
That's it, Bill Bailey.
Yeah,
and it is really funny. So again, I said to the kids, we must watch this, and they weren't very keen. Oh, Idris Elba, not that keen on him. I said, no. Honestly, the music alone is going to make it worth watching, and they were hooked by the end of the first episode. They were laughing out loud because it just, everything is just really funny. And even if you're not black, you will enjoy it enormously. And it's one of the first series that's been on television for a long, long time where the majority of the cast are black people. So that's fantastic.
Do you know who I mean when I say Adrian Lester?
No.
He's a tall, handsome black actor that appears in something on BBC that I never watch, which is about tricking people. That's called Hustle or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, he was in this programme last night for Children in Need where they make an album. He did a Stevie Wonder song and he laid down like 36 tracks of beatboxing in the background and then sang it. So not only is he handsome and an actor, but he can sing and he can beatbox. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. You will love him in that.
Which leads me on, as we've got a little bit of time today, a story about the X Factor, which is running a celebrity special at the moment. And
I could see that you were excited about that on Twitter. I couldn't even raise an eyebrow of interest in that, to be honest. No, I couldn't, no.
But three of them...
Tell me what you were going to say.
3 of them are rugby players.
I was going to say, I've not heard of any of the people.
They are really... Oh, no, there's quite a few minor celebs. There's one girl who's really impressing me who is out of The Only Way is Essex. And she's just a very talented singer-songwriter, and who knew, eh? But the funniest thing is these 3 guys who are world-class rugby players.
Do they sing together?
Yes, they're like a man band.
Okay, and what nationality are they?
Well, they're all British, and they're all, one of them is a black guy, and 2 of them are white guys, and they're all quite good-looking, and the black guy can really sing.
Great.
And they are really storming. I mean, the audience, well, the women in the audience, absolutely.
I'm mad for them, yeah.
It's well worth. Go and check them out on YouTube. I'll find a link and send it to you.
Good.
All right, that's us done then.
Yes. All right. See you next week. Oh, by the way, where I'll be at my brother's house, and I may have to jiggle with the time, as I hinted to in a private message.
No problem.
Okay.
I am
all right.
flexible.
Okay.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.